I know what I think about DEI. Not a fan. But what does God say about DEI? And what do you do? So let's talk about it. Good morning. This is Aunt Beth. Welcome to my lamppost. A brief rant before I start. I have not benefited from DEI in my life. I guess it was the time. I know it stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, but probably the best summary of the whole situation is didn't earn it. Okay. And I earned everything that I had the hard way. I started working before it was a thing. Let me just say, equal opportunity does not mean equal outcome. Okay? If you give everybody an A+ for participating, how in the heck are they going to know where they stand and where they need to improve? So, as far as I'm concerned, you know that rage that you feel when you've been standing in a long line and somebody cuts to the head of the line? Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. But what does God say? Because that's what really matters. And how do we behave? Well, let's cut to the chase. God is not a fan either. He says unequal weights and unequal measures are an abomination to him. So, what do you do when you're in a system that discriminates against you? And that's kind of different than DEI in my mind. Okay. Did I face discrimination? Absolutely. Okay. For many years, when I started working, I was the only female in a steel shop. And then I moved to a different company, and I was the only technical female. They had secretaries, and they had people in finance. But, you know, one or two women in purchasing. But, and I've had all kinds of crap handed my way. But walking as a believer through that situation is not fun. But you know, at the end of your life, I don't have to prove anything to anybody because I earned everything I had. You get thrown into a situation, you find out who's real and who's not. It's not fun. I remember in my first job, you know, the steel manufacturing plant, being told by some of the people that reported to me, why don't you go home and let a man take this job that needs it? Yeah, okay. So how do you handle that? For me, I found humor was always the best way to diffuse a situation. Because let's face it, I'm 6 inches shorter and, 20 years younger than the guys that I'm supervising. And I'm like, okay, well, if you can find somebody to sustain me in the manner to which I've become accustomed, I will be happy to go home. Are you volunteering? And that kind of shut him up. But also made a point. So humor works for me. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody. And my next company, where there were women working, but they were in finance or secretaries. I found out a couple of years later that I was paid 25% less than the people that I was supervising, even though I had a college degree and they had high school degrees. And we had about the same amount of experience because they were men, they had families, and they needed it. Boy, is that infuriating. So really, how would I have felt if somebody let me cut to the front of the line? Because that's how I feel about DEI, that rage that, they didn't earn it. But if I were to accept that offer, whoever offered me that would own me. I'm endorsing victimhood, and I refuse to be a victim. Abraham had the opportunity to have somebody give him a boatload of money, and he refused it because he knew that they would own him. And he said, I'm only going to let God enrich me. I'm not letting you buy me. Because then people feel like they have a right to tell you what to do. It is really hard when you're working and get discriminated against. It's really hard when you know that you earned everything that you have and have somebody cut to the front of the line. I think it's embarrassing for them, but I refused to play the victim. And it cheapens everything for all of us. If somebody that is my age or higher, older, has, got a degree and done this, and this, and I'm not saying a degree is necessary, in my world it was, but I know that they earned it, and they have a certain confidence. The title doesn't matter. They can, if they really earned it, no matter what happens, they can handle it. Have I had people take credit for my work? Yep. And it's infuriating when it happens. But then they have to stand in front of management and they have to answer. And they can't answer because they didn't do the work. When money's involved, money's a very emotional thing. It gets really hard. How do you maintain your joy? I have to realize the same as Abraham, that God will meet my need. And as hard as it is to do, there's a scripture that says, pray for your enemies and those that despitefully use you. Okay? But it's interesting because when I started praying for them, I lost the victim mentality and I started getting insight. And I really don't want to make their problem my responsibility. And it gave me an objectivity and an ability to think outside the box on what was the real goal. So I won't accept being a victim. And to me, that's what DEI is. Equal opportunity is not the same as equal outcome. I've got a lot of battle scars, and every one of us needs to learn how to handle the different things that come your way. For me, humor worked. It might not work for you. Sometimes you call it out. Sometimes you find another way. But one, God's got your back. He is not okay with it. Several times in Scripture, it says that unequal weights and unequal measures are an abomination to him. And two, I refuse to become a victim. I'm going to figure out a way through on what is the real mission. And at the end of my life, I can stand in front of the mirror and say, I don't have to prove anything to anybody. I know what I did. And I hope this encourages you to be free in the sense of letting somebody else define whether you're qualified or not, or whether you're a success or not. God's got your back. going to be all right. I'm not a fan of DEI, and neither is the Lord. So, go forth and conquer. All right. Have a fabulous day. All God's best.